This story is gruesome. It happened 7 years ago. This is a true story. I won't go into a lot of detail about what prompted me to think about this event. Mostly, I was just upset about having a bad day at work earlier. I then reflected on my first job. I worked for the local city public works department doing hazardous material cleanup. Essentially, my job was to help clean up after car crashes, among a few other smaller roles. Often, after a car crash, the aftermath is insane. Glass and debris all over the street, blood staining the street, sometimes even body parts found not too far away from the mangled automobile, and unfortunately, victims left behind. I hated that job. One specific incident happened one Saturday morning, like early, right after dawn. I was called to come to some feeder road that led to a busy highway. At that early hour, there was almost nobody on it yet. I remember it was brutally bright outside for some reason. Maybe I had stayed out too late that night before, but I forgot my sunglasses and squinting most of the time. Anyway, as I drove up to the site of the car crash, the usual scene was there: cop cars, someone trying to direct the non existent traffic, then there was a guy standing next to a motorcycle. He was tall and dressed in black, like all in black: black dress pants, black dress shoes, and a black short sleeved dress shirt. His shirt was the weirdest thing. It had no collar or something from what I can recall. His bike seemed fine, but in front of it, about 20 feet ahead, was a car parked on the side. It was this really nice sports car, an older red Ferrari, I think. Super nice but old, from the 1960s or so, at least according to what I recall one of the officers saying. I parked at the side of the road behind the closest squad car. I remember the air had this really weird smell to it, like some kind of fire had just happened. This happens with bad wrecks. The odd thing here, though, was that at first glance, neither the motorcycle nor the car seemed burnt. I approached the car to get a quick look, which I was always nervous about. I had no idea what I would see when I came to a new wreck. A lot of times, unless they had already towed the vehicle, it would have the remnants of the people in the car: blood soaked seats, globs of hair stuck to the partially pulled down visor, bloody hair clips. The worst were the teeth. You could find them on the road or buried in part of the dashboard. Obviously, nowadays, there are airbags galore in vehicles, but when this happened, it was years ago. If the person wasn't buckled up in one of these older cars, the carnage was gruesome. Plus, I come from a country that is a bit poorer, so there is no shortage of older cars on the roads. After I got close to the car, I noticed a few things immediately jump out at me. One was that the front end of the car was damaged. It was obvious it hit something, but it didn't crumble like a modern car. The other thing was the inside was slightly damaged. The driver's seat was burnt, and so was the part of the steering wheel. It wasn't too bad, though. More like someone had dropped a cigarette and it burnt rather than some kind of explosive fire due to the crash. And the teeth, they were there. Several lodged right into the steering wheel. I started to get to work, but a cop came over and said not to worry about it. They were going to have some forensics come in and I would have to wait around to see if they needed me. While I waited, I saw the cop grill the dude standing next to the motorcycle. They asked him where the driver of the car was and a bunch of other things. The guy dressed in black spoke with a weird European accent and apologized about something, but he didn't seem too upset. They eventually put cuffs on him and drove him off in a squad car. I waited around the wreck for over an hour, waiting to get the go ahead to start the work. It was so bright outside. They eventually towed the car somewhere else, so I didn't have anything to do. All in all, that wreck was on the lighter side. I don't recall that they ever found the victim or the owner of the vehicle. Maybe they did, but obviously that didn't have anything to do with me at that point. I know this might not be the scariest of stories, but it's a real thing that happened to me that I just remembered. I wanted to write it down. I don't know why, but of all the experiences that I had at that crappy job, that one incident is the one that stuck with me the most. This happened a few days ago. but I still feel creeped out if I think about it. I live near a big city, and I don't have a car, so I have to take the bus every day. This day started pretty normal. I was already on for like 10 minutes, and two young girls, around 10 to 11, get on the bus and sat in the seats in front of me. Some minutes passed by, and at the next stop, a really creepy looking guy, around 50 years old, got on and sat 2 rows in front of the two girls. He had dirty clothes on and overall looked really unhygienic. Some minutes passed, and I saw he always turns his head back and look at the girls that were sitting in front of me. It was already weird. Again, a few minutes passed, and I saw the guy getting out his phone and point it towards me and the two girls. Felt weird, but suddenly I saw the flash on his phone. I was shocked, but I thought maybe he just accidentally pushed the button and the flash went off. 2 minutes passed, and he did it again. At this point, I felt disgusted and got up and went over there. I was angry and fueled with disgust. I asked him, "What the fuck are you doing?" He asked back, "What do you mean?" I screamed at him in the middle of the bus, "Delete the pictures you took of the girls." He started to smile, but in a really creepy way. He looked at me and told me he did take some photos, but not of the girls. That was the moment the realization happened. The guy took photos of me. I was shocked and felt creeped out. I didn't know what to do. I just sat back in my seat and waited for the ride to arrive. Unfortunately, the girls took off the next stop, and the guy didn't. At this point, I knew he already told the truth about taking pictures of me and not the girls. Me and the guy got off at the same stop, but he didn't do nothing. He just stared at me. I still feel a little bit creeped out if I think about it. I'm happy because the two girls weren't harmed, but it was still very creepy as hell. I worked as a security guard for a year after being kicked out of my mother's house. What I saw will forever haunt me. When I turned 18, my mother kicked me out. She always thought I was useless and secretly hated me. We never got along, and she often told me I was a burden. I tried to help around the house, but it was never enough for her. On my 18th birthday, she packed my bags and told me to leave. I had no choice but to find a job quickly, and I ended up as a security guard at a hotel. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. My main duties were to patrol the hotel, check security cameras, and make sure guests felt safe. Most nights were quiet, but one night changed everything. It was a cold, dark night. I was doing my usual rounds when I heard a scream. I rushed to the source and saw a young girl, maybe 14 or 15, being dragged into an all black pickup truck by men in black outfits and masks. The girl was terrified, struggling, and crying for help. I ran towards them, shouting, but one of the men pointed a gun at me. I froze, helpless as they shoved the girl into the truck and sped off. I quickly called the police and reported the kidnapping. They arrived and started an investigation, but it didn't lead to much. The cameras couldn't catch the truck's license plate, and the men were impossible to identify with their mask and black clothing. I felt so guilty and useless. I replayed the scene in my head over and over, wishing I could have done something to save her. The image of that terrified girl haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened to her. My sleep was filled with nightmares of her and her pleading eyes, and I felt a deep sense of dread every time I saw a black pickup truck. The fear and guilt consumed me. I started having panic attacks and found it hard to focus on my job. I tried to talk to my supervisor about what happened, but he just told me to toughen up and get back to work. I felt so alone. I didn't have anyone to turn to. My mother certainly didn't care, and I had no friends to confide in. The trauma of that night stayed with me, making it hard to trust people or feel safe. Eventually, I couldn't handle it anymore, and I quit my job. But leaving that job didn't make the memories go away. Every time I close my eyes, I see that girl's face, her fear becoming my fear, her pain my pain. It's been years since that night, but the horror of what I witnessed is still fresh in my mind. The experience of working as a security guard and witnessing that kidnapping has forever changed me. I am more anxious, more fearful, and I struggle with feelings of helplessness and guilt. I hope that one day I could find peace, but for now, the memories continue to haunt me. Meet Jane. I don't know much about Jane, except that she's from a small town and she moved here with her friends and boyfriend to go to the university. When I first met Jane at the pub, I thought she hated my guts. She always gave me nasty looks. And when my friends tried to approach her friends, she'd be rude to me. Jane is pretty, like very, very pretty. Like every guy in town has a thing for her. But Jane's boyfriend is insane, to say the least. They are regulars at the pub, and I've seen them break up around 3 to 4 times. And the waiter working at the pub says he's noticed them break up a dozen more, but they always come back together. A couple of months back, I had just finished with the gym, and I had just showered when my mom called and asked about this pub and how's the food there. I told her the food's to die for, and she said that she and my stepdad were on their way there. I told them I would meet them too because I was dying for some hot wings and a burger. We sit down, and me and my dad just start drinking beer after beer, and in no time, I had down a lot of pints of beer. I was getting a little bit tipsy, but I kept pushing through. My dear friend, let's call her Tina, called and asked if I was down for a drink. I told her to come to the pub, as I was already there. She's going to meet my folks, and they planned on leaving soon, so she and I could continue. That's how it happened. My parents left, and Tina and I continued drinking on our own. The pub was closing, so Tina decided to go to the bathroom. As I walked with her inside to see if I could get another pint, we stumble upon Jane. Jane starts talking to Tina, and I realize they know each other. We all sit down to comfort her, as she was a crying mess. Her boyfriend and her were officially done for good, and she revealed that he used to be really abusive, mentally and physically. I felt bad for her, so when she rested on my shoulder, I just let her. The next night, I get a DM from her, and she's apologizing about the trauma dumping. I tell her it's no biggie, as we all need to vent sometimes. We continue chatting, and she constantly goes between I can't text you, and then texting me again. Then don't text me, and text me first when I don't. Keep in mind, this is like 2 days since that interaction. One drunken night, she texted me to meet her. It was around 2 a.m., and I had my little cousin over that whole night, and we watched movies, and he had just fallen asleep. So I declined her offer. Also, I feel it to be a bit weird for me to hang out with her completely sober while she can barely see. I don't know, it was just weird to me. The next day, she sobered up, and I agreed to meet her for a hangout. We hung out for a while, and she was fun to hang out with. I did like her, and worried about her and her ex. Soon enough, her leech of an ex left town, as he was never really interested in being close to her. One day, we had a date at her place. It was just a little date. After we finished studying, we relaxed on the couch, and we ended up making out. We didn't do anything else for that night, and after, I went home, and then we started exchanging texts talking about our night. Now, I'm a person who likes alone time, so sometimes I just want to chill at my house and not really be with anyone, and she did not like that idea. She started spamming with calls, saying how she could come over and we could chill. She would be silent, and I'd still be alone. In my opinion, this kind of defeats the idea of being alone, as I'm not alone. She threatened me that if I didn't pick up the phone, she would never talk to me again. This is where I snapped and told her that her lukewarm at best manipulation tactics would not work on me and to not contact me again. So she flipped out and came to my part of town. Hanging out and waiting for me to come out, I told her and begged her millions of times not to come to my house, but she simply said, "Nah, I'll pass," and came anyway. I literally felt so disrespected because all of a sudden, I hold no value in life. When she texted me, "Come out, I'm here," I texted her, "Nah, I'll pass," and stayed home. Now she's following me everywhere I go. It's been months, and I'm dating the girl of my dreams. But that has not stopped her from being in my shadow. She learned my routine. When do I go to the gym? When I'm at a practice event. And she never fails to show up or drive past where I'm at. My stepbrother reviewed the security footage from our house, and we counted her car driving past my house at least 14 times in a day. I still get texts from her on a daily, even though she's blocked. She gets wasted and spams me with messages on WhatsApp, and she then deletes them. My girlfriend is absolutely livid with this chick, as she would not leave me the fuck alone. I do not fear for my life, but I have warned my friends that if I die, it would not be an accident or a suicide. She's in my shadow. I constantly have to check my surroundings to see if she's behind me. I am someone who travels a lot. I could afford it, and because I work online. I've been to various places over the years. This happened recently when I was living in Thailand. I lived on an island with a small village. I moved into a good neighborhood. People were so kind to me. I was able to make friends with the locals easily since I knew a bit of the Thai language. There was one neighbor in particular that I became really good friends with. Let's call him Jack. Jack and I would do a lot of things together, like going swimming, fishing, etc. His house looked as though it had been abandoned. It was really run down. He never let me in his house before. And one night, when I was working in my house, I heard a woman screaming. It startled me. With that, I lost all my mood to work and went outside to check. The woman screamed again. My heart sank as I figured out that the voice was coming from my friend Jack's house. I went to his front door, which looked like it was over 100 years old. I knocked on it. There was no answer. The woman screamed again, and it came inside of the house. That motivated me to open the front door and get inside the house. When I entered the house, it suddenly became extremely cold, so cold that I started shivering. I was in the living room of the house when I heard the woman scream from a room nearby. I did not think any further and barged into the room, only to find out that nothing was there. It was an empty room. No furniture, no nothing. A chill ran down my spine. It was at that point that I knew that this was a strange occurrence. Hello? Anyone here? I screamed, hoping that someone would answer. No one did. I checked all the remaining rooms of the house. No one was there. They had almost no furniture. It looked as though no one lived in the house. I felt an ominous presence at that point, as though something was watching me. So I immediately went out of the house and got back to mine. I was in no mood to continue my work, so I just laid down on my bed, thinking about what just had happened at Jack's house. And before I knew it, I had drifted to sleep. I was feeling very tired after all. When I woke up the next day, I had a scratch on my arm. It looked fresh, and it burned. It felt as though something had scratched me while I was sleeping. I went about my day, trying to brush it off, and I finally finished my work. And by that time, it was already 4 p.m. in the evening, so I decided to go out and take a breather. I went to the local beach. There were a few people around when I went there. There was a salty smell in the air. This was one of the things I liked the most when I was in Thailand. As I walked down the beach, I saw Jack swimming. Jack, where were you last night? I asked. Oh, I was out of town, Jack answered as he reached the shore where I was on. I could not bring myself to tell him what happened in his house last night. I didn't want to believe what happened last night, so I tried my best to convince myself that it was just a dream. So what did you want to do? Jack smiled. I don't know. I'm just out here to get fresh air, I said as I started to walk. Jack followed me for a while, and we had conversations about different things. And not so long after, I decided to go back home. I'll go home now. I'm hungry, I told Jack. Okay, see you later. I'll just be swimming here for a bit, Jack told me as he hurried back towards the sea. So I went back home and got me something to eat. I had this strange feeling that Jack was acting strange, like it was not the usual Jack. What I found the most strange is that Jack did not invite me to go swimming. He always used to invite me whenever he went swimming. I looked at the orange glow of sunset through my window, and something was caught in the corner of my eye. I saw a pitch black figure standing right in front of my house. It had no features, no face, no eyes, just nothing more than pitch black. It stayed there for a long time, maybe like 2 hours, and the occasional person who walked on the street would not notice this figure. It was as if I was only the one seeing it. I was frightened to the core. My whole body was trembling with fear. I felt too much fear to stay alone in the house I was staying in, so I went outside and wandered around. I stopped in by the local cafe to eat something, and then wandered some more and took the path near the beach to go back home. The beach was in full sight, with dim lights illuminating the pavement next to the beach. I just realized that it was nearly midnight. I soon reached my home. I searched my pockets to find the key to unlock my house, and it was not there. I had to go back and retrace my steps till I reached the beach. I had no memory of dropping my key anywhere. Even so, I searched everywhere with my phone's flashlight till I reached the beach. I caught something shining, reflecting the light from my flashlight. It was half buried, and when I put the sand aside, I found out that it was indeed my key. Then, all of a sudden, I saw a silhouette standing in the distance. It looked the same as the one I'd seen before near my house. I attempted to ignore it, but before I could do anything, it charged at me with inhuman levels of speed, bumping into me. The minute it bumped into me, I was pushed by a force and fell down on the ground. That scared me to the core. I went back home and tried to sleep. It was 5 a.m. in the morning when I started hearing something. It was a laugh. I could barely hear it. It continued for like a good 15 minutes before suddenly going quiet. I went to go and take a look outside the window, opening it, still hesitating to look. When I looked around, I saw him. I saw Jack standing right in front of the house, with a bloody face, with two empty eye sockets, smiling ear to ear. When he saw me, he pointed his finger towards me and started laughing in an unnatural voice. He started talking from there. His voice was so loud I could hear it even from the distance where he was. Most of what he said was gibberish, but the only words I was able to make out were, "Get out of here." A chill ran through my spine. Is this really my friend Jack? The best friend I had been going swimming with? The friend I have done a lot of things with? After that, he let out a screech that made me cover my ears. I looked away for a bit, and the screeching stopped. When I looked around, he was nowhere to be found. I haven't seen him ever since. To clarify things, I asked the locals about how long he lived in that house. They told me that no one has lived there for over 20 years, and that the family that used to live in that home moved away. I obviously did not stick there for too long and left that place. I'm scared of that happening to me again. Who knows when I will meet another Jack?